Lucy, thanks so much for coming on the show here today. Really excited to have you on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you for having me.
Of
So
course.
my name's Lucy Hendricks. I own a gym in Lexington, Kentucky. And the way I like to describe my gym is it's a safe place for people who have been sidelined by pain, autoimmune issues, or even just extreme sedentary lifestyle, which we know leads to a very poor quality of life
Yes.
and extreme weakness. So these people usually don't fit in the regular gym. So that's where they come to, is my place.
I love it. I love it. And talk to me. I always like to know, like, what got you started in the world of physical preparation? Like, how did you get into this whole space?
I love this story
Yeah.
because it's you.
Yes.
you
Well, that's why I love it too. It's about me. So,
you got me started. I failed out of college when I was 19, 18. And there was this personal training program that was just getting started in Lexington, Kentucky. And my mom knew the owner and she was willing to pay for it. And
Okay.
fitness was not a passion of mine. It wasn't something that I saw myself doing because of my very shy personality.
Yeah.
But I didn't like myself and I had a severe eating disorder. So I thought, personal training school will get me fit. So at least there's that. And mom's willing to pay the $12,000. So why not?
Right. Yeah.
Why not do it?
Yep.
And during the school process, I got into corrective exercise. It was a section on NASM and
Yep.
it was about fixing people. And it was more of an approach that really spoke to me because my entire childhood, I witnessed my mom in pain. And she took us to chiropractors, massage therapists, woo-woo doctors. So the idea of fixing people really drew me in. And luckily, my teacher said, this guy that I know who I really respect is part of a seminar in Louisville, which is only an hour and a half away,
Yep.
which was your website, Mike Robertson. And if anyone wants to go, here's the website and you all can attend. And my mom, again, was willing to pay for it because she was
Nice.
just so happy that I was into something.
Right.
And I went, and you were the first person that I saw in the industry that wasn't this like peppy, like, good job, keep going, 10 more. Because
Right.
that just wasn't me.
Right.
You were the corrective exercise guy with the PVC pipe. Even though
Yes, that's dating
Even
me
though we-
right there, but yes.
we've moved past that, but
Yes.
it was cool. And I'm like, damn, I want to be just like him. And I can see myself doing what he's doing. And
Right.
I don't think they expected anybody to be underage there, but I was 19. So they weren't carding anybody at the little event at the end. So I chugged
yeah.
2 glasses of wine to build up the courage to go speak to you. And I was like, I'm Lucy Hendricks. I want to be just like you. And you invited me to dinner with my friend. And that's where I got to meet people like Steve and Jared, the smart group training guys.
Yes.
I met Luca that night as well. And you told me where to go back in Lexington. You're like, this guy, Jim Laird and Molly Galbraith, they
Yep.
do what I do. So go find them and mentor under them if you want to do what I do. And that's what got me started.
That is so cool. And I love that story. And I'm so glad. Like, one thing that I always tell people is maybe not this exact, right? Like, go see these people in this city. But I give people every day or advice, right? For free. Hey, go do this. And the amount of people that actually take me up on that, I think, is probably in the 10 to 20% range. So kudos to you for actually taking the initiative and going and meeting with them. Now, one other thing that I always love to hear is, so you go start hanging out with Molly and Jim. Fill in the blanks. Because, again, without dating us and giving away our age, like, that was a hot minute ago. So I'd love to hear just, like, your career arc and some of your stops along the way.
Yeah. So I asked for an internship and I worked for free for 9 months because they couldn't afford to take me on. And I sucked. I was really bad.
Yeah.
I had no personality. I was very shy. I was very quiet.
Yeah.
But I was skilled as a coach and they knew that.
Mhm.
So Jim made me go work at a restaurant. if he's like, if you want to get hired here and you want to make it in the industry, I don't know what you need to do. Maybe build like an alter ego or something.
Yeah.
But you got to be able to speak up and talk to people. And at the same time, they moved to a bigger building and they ran a Groupon, and they were not expecting the Groupon to blow up, and they had no help. So that really worked in my favor because they had to make a decision. We piss off our veterans, our people that have been loyal, by putting
Right.
Lucy into the
Right.
group class,
Right.
or we give Lucy the new people and have her work with the new people. And they didn't have any other help, so they were desperate, and they put me with the new people.
Yeah.
And I worked with a new person or a few every single hour, every time I was there. And
Wow.
I think I got 5 years of experience in 1 year because
Yeah.
I worked with so many people in the group setting. So I got to
Yeah.
see a lot of people move. And at the same time, I started traveling with Jim and helping him teach other people what we were doing.
Yeah.
And these other people were not like our clients. Our clients were skeptical. Oh, this breathing stuff, this is weird. What Lucy's into is strange. But when we would travel, people would come up to us in tears and they're like, I wish I had a gym like yours.
Right.
And the confidence that they gave me was what I needed to be successful, because I also found out that some of the best public speakers and the best presenters are introverts. And
Yes.
in the entire time that I was there, I was thinking, I have to change my personality. I have to be an extrovert. But when I found out that's not the case, and I got this huge confidence in what I was doing, that allowed me to create this persona that made me successful and a good coach.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's a huge lesson in here, because you may know this because I think we've hung out enough, but I don't know if a lot of the listeners know that I would definitely classify myself as an introvert. And so the way I always think about it is you've got hats, right? And you've got like I'm on the gym floor and I'm a little bit more bubbly and outgoing and hey, how you doing? But there's also the Mike Robertson at home, watching a movie or listening to music. Like, it's the same thing with public speaking. And I don't think enough people know this either. If you're a public speaker and you're an introvert, hey, you can 100% be a rock star on stage and have everybody captivated into what you're doing. But the moment that you have to step off the stage and then have those little conversations with people, like, that's the most stressful part. Right? When you're giving the presentation, it's not that big of a deal, but it's sometimes the small awkward interactions afterwards that are way harder, because that's where you're not like in control of the situation and the environment anymore.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I used to go, like I mentioned, I chugged wine to go speak to you.
Right.
When I started speaking, I would have to go chug alcohol to be able to do the small talk, because they'd be like, oh, Lucy Hendricks, this person, go find them. They're the speakers for this event. I'm like, oh, shit.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. I am very comfortable speaking with people, but it was a struggle at first.
Yeah, it takes a while. Okay, so many good topics that I want to cover here today. And I want to start by talking about your gym and the culture that you've created, because a lot of people talk about culture, and I think we've kind of gotten past that buzzy time where everybody was talking about culture. But one thing that I know has been important for you is trying to create a space and create a culture where it's okay for people to come in and show up, whether they're having a good day or a bad day, right? Because we all know we're all human. We all have good days and bad. So let's start really basic. Why was that so important for you?
It started out from a pain perspective and coaching perspective. And when I said I want people to be able to show up on their bad days, that usually meant they had a flare up. And I didn't want them to cancel their session. So this started when I opened Enhancing Life in 2016. People would text me, call me, hey, my chronic back pain has flared up. I'm going to cancel. And the way I would make the gym safe would be by modifying their session and letting them know we do not have to do what's on the program. We're just going to do a warm up for 45 minutes. Can you do that? And slowly I started building trust with people, and that just became the strategy that people would follow. If they flared up really bad or they were having a really bad time, they would come in and they would request, can I just have a breathing day? Can I just have an easy day? And that allowed me to create a space where people could come in on a bad day. But
Right.
then over the years, where I've learned other skills and focus on other things like building deep relationships and friendships with my clients, now that also goes into just life stuff. I
Hmm.
want people to be able to come in when their life is falling apart. And
Yeah.
as we get older and as my clients get older, we're all kind of going through the same thing, and we're all seeing our loved ones get old. And becoming a caretaker or watching your parents get old or watching your grandparents get old, that is an emotional and physical toll that some people are not, or most people are not capable of handling
Yeah.
without it impacting their health. I mean, people do lose their health caretaking for their parents. And I think right now, a lot of my clients are going through that, and they all still come into the gym, which is something that I feel so, I don't know, grateful and privileged that they can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that something you lead with? Like, hey, look, when you're first getting to know somebody, like, is that something you kind of outwardly state, or is it implied? Like, how do you let people know, like, hey, look, good days, bad days, I don't care. I want you to be consistent. Like, how do you start to broach that topic?
Yeah, good question. Because it is a strategy of mine. I'm
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
strategic on the conversations. I'm planting seeds
Sure.
so
Yeah.
to slowly get them to start thinking differently. So my orientation or starting point session with someone, they come into the gym, we talk, and then we do a few exercises. A lot of the people that are coming into me or into the gym are in chronic pain, so we don't do much. But while I'm taking them through these exercises, even if they're not in pain, even if they're just looking for a gym to work out in, I say, so these are the exercises that are not a representation of how your sessions will always be. So I just want to set
Right.
that expectation. The first 2 days are what we call skill building. And in these days, you're learning the cues, the lingo, the positions, and you're also going to be introduced exercises that are very simple and easy. And these are the type of exercises you would do if you are getting over the flu, because it takes weeks to get back into it. Or
Right.
you
Sure.
had and if they had pain, I'll be like if your back flared up after a road trip, or just things are not going well, your mom fell and you've spent 5 days in the hospital, this
Right.
is what we would do. And they're like, oh, okay. So I'm giving it some purpose. I'm slowly planting the seed. And then it also allows me to ease people into fitness, because most people are extremely deconditioned.
Yes.
And the easy exercises, the low level breathing exercises is exactly where they're at. So after the
Yeah.
first session, my coaches or I ask the person, on the scale of 1 to 10, how much did I push you? And you'd be surprised how many people say 7, 8, 9, even though we
Right.
did nothing.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
there, I'm like, perfect. So next time you come in, we won't do much more than this. But
Right.
if they give me a 2, 3, I'm like, amazing. So next time you come in, we'll have a new program for you.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. And it's just interesting because if you only spend time in one space like forever for your entire career, you don't really have that perspective versus, if you spend your entire college career and you're around Division 1 athletes and then you go to a Gen Pop gym and you try and install the same exercises. I mean, your warm up that you might take a Division 1 athlete through would absolutely destroy a lot of Gen Pop clients because they haven't been exposed to those things. They don't have the work capacity, their mobility, they haven't worked on mobility in 20 years. So I just love that it's kind of this organic process. And that's something that I try and do as well here lately is like, I kind of got an idea of, hey, there's a couple things I want to tick off. But the first couple sessions are really just getting to know the person and figure out what they can and can't do safely and effectively first. And then I actually go and write the program after that.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much you don't know. You don't know how much protein are they getting? And that's something huge that's been something that we've been trying to push at our gym, because I
Yeah.
realize most people are getting a third of the protein that they should be getting.
Yeah.
They're not going to recover well, especially if they're in
Right.
pain.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, one thing I'm really curious about, because you said you do get a lot of people in chronic pain. Like, how did that start? How did you start getting those people? Was it one of those where, oh, I've got this trainer, Lucy, and she's really good? Was it just like a referral thing? Or like, how did you start getting these people to show up at your doorstep?
I think it started with my lack of personality because I was so quiet and shy that that's what people needed and gravitated towards me. And Jim Laird and Molly Galbraith had already built a reputation of working well with people in chronic pain.
Right.
So the people that were in pain seemed to gravitate towards me because I was the first trainer that didn't yell at them and motivate them. And I think that's really how I got started. And I really enjoyed working with them. But the problem was I was told constantly that I shouldn't be working with these people because it's out of my scope. And that scared me from learning about pain. And for years and years and years, I felt like I was doing something wrong, but it never made sense to me because the steps that I was supposed to take were already taken. Someone's in pain. Oh, you got to refer out. They need to go to a PT.
Yes.
But when I would ask, they'd be like, I've been to 5.
Right.
So
right. I know. Yeah.
What am I supposed to do then? But then when I opened Enhancing Life, Zach Couples was doing online consults with people. And my friend Dave Rasco said, do it with your people. Get online and book a session because he's going to do a Zoom session with your people because they need help. So I started doing that with Zach. And even there, I was thinking, hopefully he doesn't find out I work with people in pain. Like, that's so embarrassing. I don't want Zach to think that I'm doing something wrong. And after him seeing 10 of my clients, I mean, we spent every weekend going back and forth with our people. He goes, so you work with people in pain?
Yeah.
And I was like, no. Like, they're referred out. This person goes here. This person goes here. This person. And I was just so scared that he was going to be like, you can't do this, Lucy. You're a trainer.
Right.
and he was like, no. Bad things have been ruled out. And what you promote at your gym is exactly what people in pain need. They need someone to tell them to walk. They need sunshine. They need food, like good food and protein. Yeah. They need movement and feeling safe in their body. And you provide that, and that's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that someone had explained pain to me in this multifactorial concept where it's influenced by many things.
Yes.
And just because I'm not diagnosing and specifically treating pain does not mean that I can't be part of their journey.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so good. And, you know, if you are younger, thank the maker that you were not in the industry 15 to 20 years ago. Because I think that was beaten into a lot of us, right? If somebody's in pain, you refer out immediately. But like you alluded to, hey, what if they've been to 5 PTs? They've been to everybody local and they're not seeing success. You know, it's just so frustrating. And luckily, I have somebody world-class that works in the same building as me, so that makes it easy. But not everybody has access to that, right? And furthermore, if you never treat anybody with pain, you're probably not going to have any Gen Pop clients at all. Because I don't know about you, every Gen Pop client I've worked with in the last probably 5 years has something, right? If you dig deep enough, an ankle, a cranky knee, a lower back, elbow, a shoulder, they all have something. Right. And so, again, if you're not sitting there trying to diagnose and treat whatever their malady is, but you're, hey, let's find safe activities for you. Let's go out and walk 20 to 30 minutes a day. Let's try and get more sleep. Like all of these other things that absolutely fit into what we do. Those are things that we should be focusing on anyways, because a lot of times it's amazing. You do those things and these people magically get better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that hard. Okay. So it's obvious that you put a strong emphasis on creating positive relationships with your clients. But with that being said, I guarantee there's some trainers and coaches that are listening, probably more like us, you know, early on when we were very technical, right? Maybe didn't always give the credence to, you know, really honing in on listening, on empathy, right? They haven't cultivated those skills yet. So what are some ways that some of our listeners can start to build better relationships with their clients and athletes?
I would say it starts by putting effort into learning from people who may not be in the industry and have other skills. And when I talk about this, I think people sometimes assume that I'm saying biomechanics doesn't matter, training doesn't matter.
Sure.
And that is not the case. What I am saying is that there are other skills that are almost just as important.
Sure.
So all this effort and time that you're putting into learning about the rib cage and how to progress someone's squat should also be going towards how do I become a better communicator and a better listener. And it's something that people didn't realize was going to be something needed when they first joined the industry, because most people join the industry because they have a passion for fitness
Yeah.
and they have a passion for lifting. No one joins the industry because they want to be someone's friend and hold space and make
Right.
people feel safe, except for my
Right.
employee that I
Yeah.
hired, which is why she's so perfect. I hired
Right.
her because she was so good at talking to people. She was my client at first,
Mm.
and she's 31. She joined our gym, and the only time she could come in was when my oldest client was in there. And I remember thinking, it's not going to be the right vibe for her. I don't think she's going to
Right.
like it, because
Right.
Skip is 82 and
Yeah.
she's 31. But
Right.
what ended up happening is that she became Skip's best friend, and she was encouraging him. It
That's
was
awesome.
so cool to see. So I went up to Dave, my business partner. I'm like, I think we need to hire Carson. I think she's going to be a really good coach.
Yeah.
And my friend Seal, who is business partner with my other friend who owns gyms,
Yeah.
he's not in the industry. And he has given me amazing advice, because I was sitting here thinking, I need to hire someone who's extremely skilled with coaching, and then I will teach all the people skills. He's like, no, do it the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
And 5 years ago, I would have gotten offended by that answer. Like, what do you mean coaching
Yeah.
doesn't matter? He's like,
Yeah.
you can teach that.
Yes.
Get someone who's good with people. And sure enough, she's one of the best coaches I've ever seen. And she's only been in the industry for a year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. This is something that I think it really put people off, because I've been saying this for a little while now, between all of the people we've hired at the gym, all of the people we've had as interns. Give me the person that's just a great human being first. If they are a great human and they're curious, I can teach you everything you need to know about coaching. But if that's flipped, you could be the Neo looking at the Matrix. You could be the most savant level coach I've ever met, but if you can't have a great conversation with another human being and really relate with them, that's a much harder skill to cultivate than it is to teach somebody how to coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's me saying that means I would have let me go.
Yeah. Right.
That was me, but I also really wanted to work on it. So if you find someone who has the drive and is willing to work on their weaknesses, give them a chance. But I would go the other way around.
Yeah. It's just easier. And I always tell people, look, when I was starting out, I was a horrible coach. I think most of us are, right? Even if we like to exercise and work out, when you're first starting out, your X's and O's are not going to be good. And that's okay, because you haven't had the reps and the experience and you don't have the foresight. But man, I was empathetic. I listened to people and I tried to create strong relationships with them. And I think that gave me enough time to figure out the technical side. So regardless of which end of that spectrum you would associate with, just know that if you're willing to work on your weaknesses, you can definitely level up. So something that I'm really interested in, because one of the issues, I'll be honest, I've struggled with this mightily over the years. So I actually really want to hear your answer on this. But one of the things that I've struggled with almost my entire career is allowing my clients' problems to become my own, right? And this happened when I was in rehab in my very first job. This happened when I was in-home. It's happened in the gym working with athletes. They have injuries. They have contract issues. All of a sudden, their problem is now my problem. So I'd love to hear your thoughts here. How can we be empathetic and caring towards the people we work with without taking on their burden in the process?
I have a lot of thoughts on this, because it's something that I always struggled with. Even though I wasn't great at communicating, I was extremely empathetic and made every single client's problems my own. Mm-hmm. And there were times where I would probably cry multiple times a week because of my clients' issues, because I deal with people in pain, and it's sad, the things that they've gone through. So that's something that I've battled throughout my entire career. And one thing that I do recommend is therapy, because even now, when I find that my emotional boundaries are getting challenged, when I'm getting upset and I'm feeling frustrated over a client not changing, my therapist and I can talk about it, and I can have someone to vent to who can give me good advice on this or challenge me. And an example would be that we recently had a conversation about was something that I was upset about and frustrated. And he said, well, didn't you have to learn through pain? Didn't you have to hit some rock bottom before you decided to change? So who are you to take that away from that person? Maybe they need to hit rock bottom to get them to change. And that
Yeah.
was very powerful because when you think about that, you think of that in the addiction world. They have to hit rock
Sure.
bottom. You can't help someone who doesn't need to be helped. And
Right.
through therapy, I've really learned to healthily detach myself from their problems. And one skill that has allowed me to do that was, or has been, the ability to truly validate someone's experience, whether it's positive or negative. And that starts with yourself. Can you first feel your own feelings? Can you
Yeah.
recognize what you're going through? And most people in the industry, because it's a male dominant industry, really struggle with this. So,
Yep.
first, can you do that? And then, can you validate yourself? So, an activity that I had my staff do recently was 4 times a day. You are going to feel what you're feeling and write that down. And I want you to write 2 validating sentences.
Mm.
And that will start with, it makes sense that I'm feeling this way because. So it makes sense that I'm feeling this because it's bringing up some stuff from my childhood.
Right.
And Dave, my business partner, said, well, I just tell myself I shouldn't feel those things. And I
Right.
was like,
Right.
right, that's the problem.
Right.
and
Right.
and that is a skill to be able to validate yourself. Can you understand yourself and meet yourself where you are and then move on from that? And then that skill can be used with other people. Can you validate them? Can you make them feel seen, heard, and understood? I see why you did what you did. I see why you think the way you think. I see why you acted the way you acted. I might not agree with you, and I
Right.
might not do it that way, but I get it. And
Right.
when you really start to build that skill and the curious mindset that you don't know everything that's going on with the client,
Sure.
you really learn to healthily detach from their issues because you're
Yeah.
able to allow them to feel what they're feeling and understand that that's not your burden to carry.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think, I've had a couple years where just like I feel like there's times in your life where things weigh on you more than others. And for me, it was just like taking like some ownership over that and like being reflective of the fact that, hey, look, just like you alluded to, their issues, their burdens aren't mine. And when I do that, when I kind of get sucked up in that, then I can't be the coach, right, that they need me to be. I can't be the human that they need me to be. And I need to be there and be supportive. But if I'm kind of getting sucked into it, then I can't be the person that they need at that point in time. So I really like that, though. And I like that idea of just kind of being conscious of where you're at. And I think it's really easy, especially now we're all busy, right? It's really, no, I'm just busy and I'll sweep this under the rug versus like taking the time to be reflective and really try and think about where you're at and why you're feeling a certain way. That's really powerful.
Yeah, and being able to realize that when people are complaining and venting, that does not mean that they're putting their problems on you and they're expecting you to give advice. And I think that's something that coaches do is they put that pressure on themselves. And sometimes people just want to vent.
Yes.
And allowing people to have these negative experiences or negative feelings, not always, is the thing that people need to change on their own. And an
Yeah.
example of this is we had a client who was plant-based and she's in chronic pain. And I found a pattern between the two. A lot of people in chronic pain do not get enough protein. So this is something that she's been working on. And she started out with 30 grams a day, which is so low.
Right.
And she's like, maybe I can do 50. This was about 2 years ago.
Yep.
And then a year ago, all right, 60 to 70 is my max. And then 6 months ago, all right, I'm going to try to hit 100. And we were really proud of her.
Yeah.
But then a crazy thing happened, super stressful week. She comes into the gym with my employee, Carson, and she had a mini meltdown. She's like, I can't do this. It's just too much. It's an impossible goal. I'm burnt out. It just takes so much effort. I just can't do it.
Right.
And my employee, Carson, all she did was validated that experience. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, it is hard. People do get burnt out. And she thought, my coach did, that she didn't do enough because she didn't give advice. She was texting me and she's like, do you have any advice on how I could have done better? Because this is all I did. And I was thinking maybe that's all she needed. But I did make a mental note that I need to talk to her next time I see her.
Sure.
Because clearly she's overwhelmed and she feels like she can't do this. So by the time I saw her the next week, she's like, oh, by the way, yeah, never mind. I got it. I figured it out. It's good.
Right.
And that showed me, wow, she just really needed to let that out and go through this negative experience. And then she was able to move on.
Yeah. That's something I actually learned from my wife. I don't remember. There's been a couple times where she's like, sometimes people don't want your advice. I'm like, what? Come on, everybody wants my advice, right? She's like, no, sometimes they just want to say what they need to say and get it off their chest, and that's it. You just need to be there for them. I'm like, oh, okay. I think I can do that. But yeah, it's just, if you don't think about it like that, I think there's this natural thought process of somebody's coming to me, they need my advice, right? They want me to say something now versus just relating and being like, yeah, I get it. It's hard. I feel bad for you right now. And, if you need me, I'm here for you. Just letting people know that you're there, I think is very important for a lot of people.
Yeah. And if you do give advice, you are way better off first validating that person's experience. And then you're way better off providing a different perspective. But if you immediately go to the different perspective, people are going to be turned off by that.
Right. Because they're going to think you're not listening.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Okay. So I want to zoom out a little bit. What are some of your keys to more effectively communicating with your athletes? What are a couple big rocks or things that you like to hang your hat on?
My ability to listen, which is something that I've worked on over the years, and I'm still not perfect.
Sure.
But what I am better at is letting someone know where I'm not in a position to listen. Not so much with my clients, because when I'm on the training floor, I'm there for them. But other people in my life, I straight up say, it's not a good time. I'm not going to be listening. I'm worried about this podcast, or I'm thinking about this project. But when you truly listen to your clients, you are now able to make observations that help them figure things out and connect the dots. So what I mean by that is most people who are not in the industry don't have enough knowledge to connect the dots on how one thing leads to another. Like some people don't realize the fact that they're drinking coffee at 8 p.m. is the reason why they're not sleeping well. They've never thought about that. And us in the industry, we're very privileged because we have great knowledge that allows us to connect these dots. So when you listen, you're able to remember things and you're able to point things out in a very strategic way. Like, didn't you say you just went on a 2-week road trip and you didn't sleep well? Because to me now that makes sense why your back might have flared up. And you're able to make these observations that allow them to grow awareness over what's happening, because most people just don't know. Right. And when you really listen, you also give the appropriate response, because something that may seem like a good news might be something that's very uncertain to them, that's a scary thing for them. But because you didn't pay attention throughout their journey, you said, ooh, that's exciting. You got an appointment with that doctor. But really what's going on in their head, it's like, but what if this doctor doesn't help me and I've already gone to 10?
Right.
This is not good news. It could be good news, but that's not how I'm feeling. And again, you're not validating that person's experience, but that came from really being able to pay attention.
Yeah. Something that you said is this idea of connecting the dots. I think that's so important because a lot of the stuff, it gets worse the longer you're in the industry. You start to see these connections. I couldn't imagine being in Bill Hartman's mind and he looks at your right toenail and knows what's going on with your skull or whatever. But connecting the dots for people, I think is so important. And I think that's something, the longer you do this, the less you can take for granted. You just automatically have so much processing power. And so that's where if you have a new client, you need to really connect the dots. Hey, A connects to B, connects to C. So yeah, your coffee, this is why you're not sleeping, and explaining that and breaking that down to them, because too often people just don't know, right? Like you alluded to, they don't know what they don't know. And if you just try and assume that they know A connects to M or Z, they're going to be lost. And so being able to be a really effective communicator is being able to explain things at whatever level they need to be explained to, just so they can understand it and they can kind of rock with it and go forward from there.
Yeah, and being able to connect the dots where they don't feel ashamed or guilty or
Right.
embarrassed or judged. And that's a
Yes.
whole other skill. And I do think that even trainers, even people who do know, like myself, when you're experiencing something negative, pain, autoimmune issue, health issue, it is very hard to have a logical perspective, even if you do know. I go through it all the time. I'll have a little meltdown of like, why is this happening to me? And then
Yeah.
like the next day, I'm like, okay, like I haven't slept for a week.
Right.
I've been traveling.
Yes.
This
Haven't
crazy
worked out
thing
the way I
happened to
want
me.
to. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think this is just a great point too. Like, I don't know where this comes from. I don't know if it's like from popular media or from like, some of the TV shows that used to be on back in the day, but this like perception of perfection, the way like our clients view us, they assume that we work out every day, right? We eat, 5 to 6 perfectly nutritious meals every time. There's no sweets, no treats. Like, so like immediately when I start to hear some of that stuff, I'll just like kind of nip that in the bud. Like, no, like, look, there's nights I don't sleep enough, right? There's times when I don't work out as often as I should. I enjoy ice cream and cake as much as the next person, So like just letting them know, like, hey, there's nothing to be shameful, right? I'm not judging you because I do those things too, and creating, like we've talked about before, but like having this safe space where it's like it's okay to do those things, right? It's just being smart about, hey, I'm not going to do that every day.
Yeah.
Right? Or I'm
Yeah.
going to be conscious of, I'm going to make these conscious decisions to do those things versus just being on autopilot and unconsciously doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're known, or I am, Dave's more private than me, but I'm known, I'm an open book. But
Yeah.
there's an art to it because I bring up all the things that I struggle with, but
Mhm.
maybe not in the moment. But
Yeah.
once I can laugh about it, once it's like slightly in the past where I can normalize struggle and normalize things without bringing the mood down because it is their training session. They are
Yeah.
paying me to provide a positive experience, even though
Sure.
I do welcome negative
Yeah.
experiences. But even this week, a client found out that last year, like 6 months ago, I was dealing with a lot of health issues after this crazy thing that happened to me.
Right.
I was having numbness all over my body. So I
Oh,
thought I
man.
was like getting MS,
Right.
and I had irregular uterine bleeding. So I
Oh,
was
my.
just gushing blood for a month,
Yeah.
and I went to the ER
Wow.
because of it. And she's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! When did this happen?" You were here. Like I
Yeah.
was here. And I
Yeah.
also let them know, and they do know, that training them is not a burden on me. It's like an escape. So
Right.
like when my life is blowing up, I love being there. I love training them. But
Yeah.
I also want them to know that I too struggle, and I too struggle being logical with my life because I will struggle connecting the dots.
Yeah. What makes you relatable, right? It makes you a real human versus somebody that's up on this pedestal and never makes a mistake or never has a cheat meal, whatever that you want to think of it. Like, hey, we're real people too, man, and we have stuff that we deal with. So one of the things that we were talking about kind of leading up to the show is, and one of the things that you're really passionate about is finding ways to empower your clients who have maybe been disempowered by the medical industry, right? They've been told this horrible diagnosis, or, it's just all of this doom and gloom. So I think this is something we're seeing more and more of, right? And not just from the medical community. People have access to every diagnosis via the Google machine. So I'd love to hear how you're trying to help some of these people, better manage these things and process some of this stuff without directly contradicting the medical advice that they might be getting.
One way is by having the medical community help me. And I did that by asking a lot of my friends who are physical therapists who have worked with me or have learned from me to write me a Google review. And as a physical therapist, please write why you think people should see us. Because most people do not promote fitness. Clinicians do not promote fitness. Most doctors don't promote fitness. They actually do the opposite.
All right.
And I need help because I need what I jokingly say, I need to put my dick on the table. So when one physical therapist tells my client, you should not squat or you shouldn't walk uphill, you're going to believe that person, or are you going to believe me who has 10 Google reviews of why I'm the best person to work with
Right.
if you're in pain? So that's
Right.
one thing that I did, was I asked the medical community to help me, because the medical community really puts me down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too, right? Because like you feel like you're constantly combating, but man, yet somehow the country as a whole, there's more issues of like chronic pain. We're getting more and more overweight. Like you said, why are we not promoting fitness more? And I wish we could kind of all be on the same page with this. And I feel like we could have like an entire discussion on, shady back deals and like all the money, big pharma, conspiracy theories. But like the fact of the matter is, it's not very profitable to have people that are thin and at a normal body weight and feel good. Like, it's kind of scary. But again, hopefully this is where people like us can step in and say, hey, look, you can be in charge of your own health and your own well-being. And if you find the right people, whether it's trainers, dietitians, physical therapists, you find the right people and you surround yourself with the right network, you can really start to take your own health and well-being back.
Yeah, yeah. So that's one thing that I do, is really building trust from the get-go, because people read that and then they come in already having trust that used to take me probably a year or two to gain. And I've seen the difference. Sometimes people come in flared up, a new person, and they didn't even text me. When it first started happening, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they didn't try to cancel, because before they would immediately cancel and I would have to talk to them and slowly build trust. I would really have to baby people. And now I'm able to be a little more adventurous or push the limits, because if they flare up, they come in the next day. So I really noticed a big difference when I got those reviews on my website. So if you like working with people in chronic pain, I really think people should come together and do something like that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do is I use their own experience to slowly start changing their views and their relationship with pain. And I think even if a physical therapist has the skills to encourage people to understand that the body is adaptable, and just because something hurts in the beginning doesn't mean it will always hurt, they don't always have the time, because people in pain need time. They need slowly to change their beliefs. So what I do is I use their own experience. So what that looks like is, day one, their knee kind of hurt when they got in half kneeling, but they've never had knee pain. They don't have this big emotional response because their knees don't really scare them, but their back scares them, because that has been something that they've dealt with their whole life. But the knee was just like it's fine. So 2 weeks later, we do half kneeling again. And I'm like, oh, how does that feel? I'm like, oh, actually it doesn't hurt at all. And there I plant the seed of how you can do something and it hurts, but then if you keep doing it, then you eventually adapt. And then a month later, when they go up on their deadlift and their back hurt a little bit and they're scared, I'm now able to bring up the knee situation. And by really paying attention and reading the client, if they seem like they're engaged, I know I have them and I'm slowly changing their belief. If they're like, no, my back's different, you don't get it, then I backtrack and I'm like, okay. Like what we can do is something different.
Yeah.
But if they do trust me, I'm like, how about this? So why don't we do the same thing you did last Monday, and let's just see if it's better.
Yeah.
And almost always it is. And then that right there is like how we slowly start changing people's beliefs. But that might take months to a year. And most physical therapists don't have that time. And most people can't afford to see a physical therapist that long.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Okay. All right. Big question time, my friend. If you could alter the space-time continuum and give young Lucy Hendricks one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell myself that every single negative thing that has happened over the last 14 years turned into something amazing.
Wow. I like that. All the negatives have turned positive somehow, huh?
They really have. Yeah. And even when I catch myself thinking, wow, like I was like going in such a good direction until this thing happened. But then when I start to really think about it, it's like, well, if that thing wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have gone here and I wouldn't have gone here. And Business for Unicorns is the perfect example. Business for Unicorns, working with Michael Keeler, has been one of the best things that's ever happened in my life.
Yep.
And now I'm going to cry.
Oh, no. You can cry. It's okay. Safe
if
space.
I wouldn't have messed up so much with enhancing life and owning a business at a young age, I was not ready to own a business with my ex-boyfriend.
Right.
if we wouldn't have screwed up so bad, we would have never ended up at Business for Unicorns, because Business for Unicorns was our last chance. Michael Keeler was hosting a workshop called Coaching Conversations, and it's how to have difficult conversations, how to be a better communicator. And I remember telling Dave, because we were in debt, we had no money, but I had just done a workshop in New York, so I had $3,000. I'm like, this is going to be our last chance, okay? Like, I know we hate each other, but let's just try to go to this workshop with this guy named Michael Keeler and Mark Fisher, and let's just see if they can help us. And they did. Dave and I are now platonic best friends, and we are like
I love it.
A healthy divorce couple. Yeah. And we're so glad we held on. So everything negative that's happened to me really has turned into something amazing.
I love it. And if you're wanting to learn more about those such people, I know Mr. Mark Fisher has been on the podcast a couple times. I'll make sure I link to him in the show notes, because he is amazing. Great hair. Jealous of the hair. I'm always like, man, you fit in perfectly in New York, my friend. Okay. Last but not least, lightning round. So 4 fairly short questions. Yours are a little bit longer than usual, but your answer can be as long or short as you like. Okay. Number 1, what does it mean to you to truly listen?
To truly listen means that you're truly curious about the person in front of you, and that you're really trying to get to know them and understand them at a deep level, even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah, that's an important point, because you're not going to agree with everybody, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't work that way. Okay, so playing on the theme of curiosity, my second question, one thing that I know you like to do is create a curious mindset. So what are some ways that you go about doing that?
By being wrong. Every single time that I'm wrong, I'm reminded this is why I should always be prepared to be wrong, no matter how right I feel, which means I should be curious about the other perspective. And that really happened to me in 2020, where I thought I was 120% right about the situation. There was no way that I was wrong. And then shit hit the fan. And for 2 weeks, I thought my life was over, my career was over, my reputation was over. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because now, no matter how right I think I am, I always remember when you thought you were right, but you were really wrong. Right. And it has completely changed my perspective on everything. And I have OCD, and it runs in my family. So someone with OCD can also get really close-minded, and they can be very skilled. They can learn things really fast. But that was really impacting my ability to be open-minded and hearing other perspectives. I didn't realize how biased I was. So finding ways where you can be wrong and really appreciating those moments and making you realize you're not always wrong and there's always a different perspective is probably the best way to get curious.
I love it. Okay. This is going to be a good one. Number 3, the best advice you have for a young coach right now today to make them a more effective communicator.
I would say that you need to practice and get your reps. And that might mean role playing, which everybody hates, including myself.
Yes.
But
yes.
How else are you going to get your reps? You have to get your practice, because if you don't get that practice, then when that situation happens, conflict, difficult conversation, or here's this person venting, how do you validate them? You're going to go back to what you normally do. But if you get those reps, you'll be better off. And also embracing those difficult conversations and seeing them as practice and knowing that they will get better. So anytime there's a difficult conversation that I have to go through, I remind myself, like, this feeling that I'm feeling that's very uncomfortable and I want to throw up is temporary, and it will get better the next time. And luckily my life is not full of conflict, but anytime there is, I'm like, this is practice. It will get better.
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. Okay, number 4, last but not least, what's next for Lucy Hendricks?
Growing my gym and growing my team, and really letting go of control, because I've been so good at working by myself and I've loved working by myself until recently.
Yeah.
It's been a new thing for me. I always thought that I would just make enough money for the gym to hire a manager, because managing people was not my skill set. I did not want to hold people accountable and, hand hold them and get them to do things, but things changed. So now I love managing and I love my team and I'm excited to grow it.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up to that? Like, what would you attribute that to? What changed?
Communication.
Yeah. Just you
Skills,
feel like you're just more effective, more comfortable communicating, and that led to that shift?
and having Keeler as the biggest mentor, because we joined Business for Unicorns at the end of 2019.
Okay.
So now it's been 4 years of not just being coached by him, but also them leading by example.
Yeah.
And that's what's helped me the most.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. Well, Lucy, it's been a while since we've seen each other in real life, even though this is not real life. It's pretty darn close. Really appreciate you coming on. This was a great conversation. I know the listeners took a ton away from it. So now I'm curious, where can listeners find out more about you and all the great work that you're doing?
I'm on Instagram.
IG.
So,
let's go.
Lucy_Hendricks. And I used to have a website. It probably is still up. Lance made it.
Thanks, Lance.
Coach Lucy Hendricks, but I retired that side of me. But enhancinglifegym.com, that is my gym's website. Okay. So if people want to see how we communicate with people, how we email, the podcast that we do for clients, I would encourage people to just opt in so they can just be a fly on the wall of what we do at our gym if they want to learn from me.
Yeah. No, I think that's really smart. And I think that's a really good way to go about things. If you want to be in this space that Lucy's in or learn more from her, why not kind of, like you said, be a fly on the wall? Imagine that you're a client going into that space and just take in all of the goodness, right? The content and the marketing materials, because that'll help you kind of get into that same wavelength. So, Lucy, again, this was so great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.